Very good morning, students. Welcome back to online classes. Today session is revision class 3 based on the chapter classes and objects. Let us see what are the topics we are going to cover in today's class. The same warning note for the students for all the revision classes. Note, this information is for the students, not to skip the videos for the betterment of the students to understand the revision concepts. First, the previous theory classes of a particular topic was being covered. Those videos will be played and followed by that revision concept on the same topic will be carried out. Now, we'll see that what are the topics we are going to cover into today's session. Topics to be covered in revision class 3. Defining an object of a classes, array as a member of a classes, arrays of objects, objects as function arguments, difference between structure and classes. These are the subtopics where we are going to cover in today's session. We'll see in detail in all the topics.
Very good morning, students. Before getting into today's session, we'll just check it out what are the topics we have covered into the last sessions. We have seen a program by using classes, using members, functions inside and outside the classes, defining objects of classes with the two examples, array as a members of classes. Yes, we'll just get into today's session. Arrays of objects. Like array of other user-defined data type, an array of type class can also be created. The array of type class contains the objects of the class as its individual elements. Thus, an array of a class type is known as an array of objects. Array of class type is known as an array of object. An array of object is declared in the same way as an array of an built-in data type. An array having a class type element is known as array of objects. An array of object is declared and is defined in the same way as an other array. Here we have a general syntax of array of an object. A class name followed by an array name. Array name, we can also tell that the object name with a size of an array. Here we have a small example of a employees. A program which is being created as a class for an employee, which data members are name and age. And I'm going to get a data and display data by using a array of an object. In this example, I have created one of a class called as an employee. In this employee, I have a data member as a name, as data type as a char with a name of size of 10 and age. I have created a one data member function called as an get data and I'm going to create one more data member function called as a display data with a return type as an void. Now I'm going to close a class. We are going to see that how we are going to create an objects of an array. In a main program, you are going to take it as already we know that we have created a class name called as an employee, followed by an object called as a supervisor, with an array as 3. Now, once I declared as supervisor array of 3 in the sense, we can have a 3 supervisor, which they can share the same data members called as a name and age. And also, I have created a one more object called as an employee as a class name, followed by a sales executive. This is one more object which is being created in an array called as an 5. Now, in the previous object which is having a 3 objects, and in a sales executive totally 5 objects. And also I'm going to create a third object called as a team leader which has a 2 2 objects. Totally we have created a 3 objects. In the first object they have 3 members been assigned, and in sales executive 5 members have been assigned, and team leader which is been assigned as 2. In an above example, the array supervisor which contains 3 objects, namely with the supervisor of 0. Why? Because the array starts with index of 0. The 0, that is nothing but the first supervisor which shares the same data member called as a name as well as a age. Second supervisor, the same thing, which is going to share a data member called as a name as well as your age. And the third supervisor, he is also going to share the same data member called as a name as a age. This is how we are going to initialize a data objects of an array. Storing of a data item in an array, this is a process which has been happening. Here we have a small example for a student. The student in this program, we are going to get the datas. That is nothing but I'm going to get the datas like roll number and the 2 subjects which has been max and science. After getting that roll number and the marks, I'm going to find the average for the given marks, and I'm going to display the average. Now totally in this program, what is the process here in the sense? We are going to just get the datas. What are the datas we are going to get it? We are going to get the datas as roll number and 2 subject marks. 2 subject marks is mathematics as well as your science. After getting it, I'm going to display. After getting it, I'm going to display. Before displaying it, I needed to find an average. So that totally I have 3 data members. That is nothing but roll number, max and science. And I have 3 member functions. 3 member functions, call it as average, get data and put data. This average member function where we are going to find the average of given marks, and get data member function where you are going to get the roll number, max marks as well as science marks, and put data member function is a process where we are going to display this total data members and member function. It is being created in the class called as a data, and overall the member function is being created outside the class. Here we can see that clearly the class has been closed. First, we are going to, before getting a calculation part, first we need to get all the information from the student. So I'm going to write the first member function called as a get data. In a get data member function, first thing I'm going to get the data of enter the roll number. I have received the roll number by using a cn, and enter the marks. Secondly, I have accepted the marks, and thirdly I'm going to accept the data of science. Once I have entered all the data members, that is nothing but roll number, max as well as a science. Once it has been entered, I'm going to create a one more member function called as an average. In an average, I'm going to initialize one more variable called as an a, where a which is going to store the average of a marks. How to calculate the average? That is nothing but max marks plus science marks divided by 2. Once the calculation is got over, the result which is going to store into the a. Now the calculation part got over. Now after getting a calculation part getting over, we are going to display the average. We'll see that how we are going to display the average by using a put data function. Now put data function which is being called into the get data function. Once a function is called, the control passes. before getting into this, we'll see that how the put data is being created. Now, we are going to create a put data. Put data is a member function. In this member function, I have created a put data where I'm going to display the average. See out average. Once an average is equals to average function is called. Once a function average is called, the control passes through the average function. Once in the average function, we have calculated the average by using a is equals to max plus signs divided by 2. Now the average is being stored into the a. Return a. Now the array average is being stored into the a. Now the a value is being displayed here. Till now the member function is being created. Let us get into the main program. Here clearly you people have to concentrate that how the object of an array is being created. Now int main, we have created a main program. Once you create a main program, I'm going to create an object by called as a class name and object name followed by the array size. My array size is 3 so that I could access the 3 objects at a time. Once a array is used, usually you people have to use a for loop. For I is equals to 0, where the first index which is going to start with a 0 till index of I is less than 3. I is less than 3, so that a 3 objects is being accessed. Once you want to access the data members or member functions, we are going to use one of the operator called as a dot operator. Now a student is an object of I is nothing but array dot get data. Once it has been get data, function is being accessed. The function turns towards a member function called as a get data. In that get data, we have called one of the function called as a put data. Once a function called as put data, which is access the put data. Once a function called as put data has been accessed, it is going to display my the arrays. For an example, I'm going to accept a 3 students data. We'll see that how the output is going to be seen by using a array of an objects. The output of the previous program is first we have entered the roll number. Roll number is 20. And I have enter the marks. Mathematics marks is 56 and enter the science marks as a 78, and we have calculated, as you know that we have calculated 56 plus 78 divided by 2. Once we give a divided by 2, my average is being found. Here we have a two outputs for an example. Let us see that what is the next topic. I hope that I clearly understood how to create an array of objects. Our next topic is object as function arguments. Object as function arguments. The object of a class can be passed as arguments to a member function as well as non-member functions, either by value or by reference. Either by value or by reference. When an object is passed by a value, a copy of the actual object is created inside the function. Object is created inside the function. This copy is destroyed when the function is terminated. When the function is terminated. Object as a function arguments. Object as a function argument. As we know that we can pass any type of an argument within the member function, and there are any number of arguments. In a C++ programming language, we can also pass an object as an argument within the member function of a class. This is useful when we want to initialize all the data members of an object within another object. We can pass object and assign the value of supplied object to the current object. Clearly understand the concept? We can pass object and assign the value of supplied object to the current object. For a complex or large project, we need to use object as an argument. For a large project, we need to use object as an argument. A function can receive an object as a function argument. This is similar to any other data being sent as a function argument. An object can be passed to a function in two ways. The first one is copy of entire object is passed to a function, that is nothing but a pass by value. Second one, only address of object is transferred to the function, that is called as a pass by reference. What are the two ways? One is nothing but pass by value and second one is pass by reference. Let us see that in detail what is pass by value and pass by reference. In a pass by value, once a copy of an object is passed to a function, once a copy of an object is passed to a function, function itself creates its own copy of an object and use it. Therefore, changes made to an object inside the function do not affect the original objects. Once again, I'll repeat. Once a copy of an object is passed to the function creates its own copy of an object and used for the purpose. Therefore, once a change is made to the objects inside the function do not affect the original objects. Next one is pass by reference. Pass by reference means to pass the reference of an argument in the calling function to the corresponding formal parameter of a calling function. The called function can modify the value of the argument by using a reference pass in. What is that? Modify the value of an argument by using a reference passing in. When address of an object is passed to the function directly works on the original object used in function called. Pass by reference is more efficient since it requires only to pass the address of an object and not the entire object. The major difference between a pass by reference and pass by value is that the modification made to an argument passed by reference in the called function having affect the calling function, whereas modify made to argument passed in the value in the called function can not affect the calling function using pass by reference. If you want to modify the argument value in the calling functions, after seeing array of objects and object as function arguments, we'll just check it out. The next topic is the difference between the structure and classes. The first difference in structure. A structure is defined with a keyword called as a struct. In a class is defined with the keyword called as a class keyword. All the members of structures are public by default in structured programming, but whereas all the members of a class are private by default. This is a major difference between a structure and a classes. We'll come again. In a structure, struct is a keyword which is used in a structure programming. Struct is a keyword which is used in structure programming. Whereas in a classes, class is a keyword which is used as a class. And all the members of a structures are public by in default, whereas all the members of a class are private by in default. This is a last topic of this chapter. Today we have seen a major three topics, whereas array of objects, object as function arguments with an example, and difference between structure and the classes. Here ends this classes and object chapter. I hope so that a previous session assignment is being completed by all the students, and now we'll have today's assignment. In today's assignment we have explain member function. In that we have two sub questions, that is nothing but inside the class definition, outside the class definition. To initialize member function inside the class definition and outside the class definition. Explain the arrays of objects. Next question, explain different access specifiers. Today's assignment we have three questions. Here ends this chapter, object and classes. Let us see in the next session we'll start a new chapter. Thank you.
Good morning students, welcome back to online classes. So this is your class 3 revision class for your classes and objects. Okay, so I'll just I'll just revise what we discussed in the last two classes. So this is your section 3. So in the last two sessions what we have discussed we'll just see. Okay, in the first session we have just seen the definition for class. What is class? Class is a collection of objects which has an identical properties, shared relationship and a common behavior. So class is also called as a template or a blueprint which contains the data members and the member functions. So we have seen the definition for class, as well as we have seen the how to define the class and the how to declare the class. So class definition and class declaration with syntax and example we have seen. Later we have seen the access specifier, three types of access specifier with a programming example. So in the last session we discussed about how to define a member function. What is member function? Member functions are also called as methods, and these member functions, how to define the definition for this member functions can be done in two ways. One is inside the class definition, next is outside the class definition. So what are the characteristics when we define a member function inside the class? So inside the class when we define, we give it as public. In public and our public access specifier we define the member function. For example, in yesterday we have seen like get data and put data. So get data and put data, those definitions I have given within the class. So we call that as, so within the class definition. For the methods or functions, when we define what does the operation of that particular method takes place, when we define that particular operations within the class, we call that as the class definition inside the class. Okay, so we know how the class ends. So once the class ends, after that when we want to define the member function, so what we have to do in the public access, under public access specifier, you have to mention only the methods. The member functions, only the member functions you have to mention, like void with the return type, void get data and void put data. So after that, once you just mention it, once you want to define the member function outside the class, you need to use a special operator called a scope resolution operator. So scope resolution, with the help of a scope resolution operator, you need to define, I have given the syntax to how to define the member function outside the class. Once you define the member function outside the class, first to return type, class name, scope resolution operator, then the method or the member function. Within the bracket we pass the arguments. I repeat, return type, class name, scope resolution operator, then the member function, then inside the bracket you can pass the arguments. This is the syntax. Based on this you have to implement the class, how to define the member function outside the class. So in today's session I will define how to declare the object of a class. We know how to create a class. So class, then user defined name for the class. Later that inside the curly braces we have data member and the member function. Now we'll see how to define the object of a class. I have given you an example. First let me tell you what is an object. You know what is an object. I have declared when I was doing classes and objects I told, okay. An instance of a class we call it as an object. Okay, what is an object? An instance of a class we call it as an object. So once a class is created, okay, the object is created from that class. Once we create the class, so the object of that can be created. How to create the object I will tell you. Now I have taken an example, just go through this example. So defining objects of a class. First I have given the syntax. Class user defined name for the class. We have two access specifier, and the private usually it will be the data member, public it will be the methods or the member function. Next we have user defined name, then we can have object 1, object 2, n number of to object n. So how many objects can be created per class? N number of objects can be created. How to create? For example, if I take class student. Now what is my class name? Student. Then student S1, S2, S3 like that I can create. If I want to create a class for employee, class employee, user defined name is nothing but my employee, employee E1, E2, E3 like that up to En, we can create the objects of the class. Now I have taken an example. This is an example. This is still here, it is syntax for the class and how to define the object of the particular class. In the previous example, you may not included this sentence, okay? This statement tells that how to create object of that class. I told what is the object, what is an object? An object is an instance of a class, okay? If you want to access the data member and the member function without object, you cannot access anything within the class. So how to create this object? Class name and object, okay? So this object name again it's a user defined, okay? Now class, what is my class name? This is example. I have taken example 1. So class num, I have two access specifier, private, public. So usually in private it will be your data member. So this is my data member. So what are my data member? The variable x and y. Data member I told you it can also call as data variables, okay? Now public I have two methods. What are those two methods or two member functions? So we have two member functions, sum and diff. See, I have shown you the syntax. Once you are not defining within the class, what we have to do, you have to just mention what is your member function. Later the definition you can give outside the class. So in this condition, I have not defined what sum and diff will do. Just I am just mentioning these are going to be my two member functions, which is going to be enclosed in the class. One is sum and next one is difference. Okay. So I passed the arguments int p, int q, int p and q. So these two are called as member function. Okay. So let me not define what member function definition I am not given. Why? Because you need to concentrate how an object can be created. Now you see the program execution begins from the main function. Now by using the class name I have created the object S1 and S2. But you can ask me a question. See, madam, according to the syntax you are given here, but here you are defining the object inside the class. There are two ways of declaring. There are two ways of defining an object for the class. One is as soon as the class name is here also you can create. One is even in the main function by calling the class name, by using the class name you can create the object. Okay. So there are two ways. So if you are not following this method, here also you can create. See, here also you can create. You write your your class name num. So S1 comma S2 semicolon. Like this you can create. If you don't want to create, if you don't want to use this, so what you can do here in this example, I have directly created in the main function, that is S1 and S2. So I told you how to call the member function. Without the objects, without creating the objects of a class, we cannot access the member function. I repeat, without creating the object of that particular class, you cannot access the data member and the member function. So S1 dot sum. Here I am passing the arguments. So this is 200. Directly I am passing the value. Even for different I am passing the p value and q value. So this is about how to create an object and how to use that object to call the member function. Okay. Next we will see array as members of class. Students, next we will see array as members of a class. I repeat, array as members of a class. That means what we can do, we can define in the data member, we can define the array. As how we define the array in your regular programs, even in the data member, we can define an array. So this can be used by the member function called set value and display in the given example. See, I have taken an example. Why? Because this concept is useful for the next concept, because next concept will be array of objects. So array of objects will be a 5-mark question, okay. So they may ask you what is illustrate with an example how to create an array of objects. So before that we need to understand, can we create an array as a data variable? Can we include the data, can we include an array in your data variable? Yes, of course, we can include that in your member data. So here I created, like how we create the normal variable, like that I have created an array in your data member. So by default it is private. If I not mention any access specifier, it takes it as private. So when I take class marks, a particular student, he is taking n number of subjects. So obviously the marks of that n number of subjects has to be recorded in your database. For example, 6 subjects. A particular student, the individuals that take 6 subjects. So 6 subject marks has to be maintained. So when you want to implement in terms of program, you need to take an array. If it is a register number, we need not to give it an array. If you want to create for the n number of students, it can be even for the n number of students. If you want to maintain n number of students register number, you can go for an array. If you want to maintain a individual single student register number, you need not to give it as an array. So here I have given for the marks, I have taken it as an array M5, that means marks 5, that means he is having 5 subjects. Next I have I. In your public access specifier, in the public part, usually it will be this will be a data member, this will be a member function. So here it will be setval and the display. Setval will set the value, display will display the marks. Okay. So this is about the small example where I have shown you how can we create array as members of a class. So array can be a member of class. Is it possible? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Yes, it is possible. We can create array as a member of a class. Okay. Next, this is very important. Array of objects. What do you mean by? So now in the last just couple of minutes back, I spoke about how to create object of a class. Now, can we create array of objects? Can we create? Yes, of course we can create. So array of objects is possible. So what is meant by an array of objects? An array having class type elements is known as array of objects. I repeat, an array having class type elements is known as array of objects. For example, supervisor. If I give supervisor element 5, so in a malls or in a business fields and all, if there will be a supervisor who will be maintaining, for example, for 20 members there is a supervisor. So there might be each and every department for 20 members there is a supervisor. Imagine there are 5 supervisors. So I need to create supervisor 5. That means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So how to maintain the detail? I maintain supervisor 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that I will show you an example how that takes place. So can we create array of an objects? Yes, we can create array of objects. If you want to access it in like I told you, if you want to access more than one data, you can create array of objects. So one object, if it is not worthy, you can go for n number of objects. So we can create array of objects. That is why they have given you an array having class type elements is known as array of objects. Next I will show you an example program. Even in the regular session, you might have watched in your PPT. So there will be a program. Here they will take the supervisor example. So they have a supervisor, sales executive, team leader. They have created an array of objects. Based on that they implemented a program. Let me take that program and explain you. Then one more program I will tell you how to show the use of array of objects by taking the marks of the student. So we will see 2 examples. One is in the business line, one is in the for the student will maintain a database how to create the array of objects. Students, next we'll discuss. So I told you how to create an array of objects. I have taken an example for an employee how to create an array of objects. Class name is employee. You see in the private, these are nothing but my data member. Name, I repeat, name and age are my data member. When I not specified the access specifier like private, public, protected, default it will be private. Now public, under public usually it will be a member function. Member function, so get data and display on my member function. You can easily make out the definition. I have not given inside, so it is obviously the definition they are going to mention outside the class definition. Now after once the class ends, see how they have just created the objects of the class, how they have created array of objects for that particular class. So how they have created employee, then we have, that is your class name, then they have the user defined name supervisor. Here it is 3. Here it is 3. Why? Because for the supervisor, when I want to maintain his details, supervisor 0. What are the fields we may have for the supervisor? I may have name, age, all his details, etc. Okay. Next, if I say kind of thing I want to maintain it for supervisor 1. Okay. So again name, age, all his details. Next, supervisor 2. Okay. So 3 means 0, 1, 2. So like this we are going to maintain an array of objects. Similarly for sales executive, similarly for team leader, This is an array of size 5. This is an array of size 10. So this is an example for array of objects, how to create array of objects. Next example, we'll see same for array of objects. I'll take you an example how to maintain the student marks by using array of objects. By using array of objects, how to maintain the student record. So this is an example program students have taken for the how to use an array of objects. So this have taken to maintain the marks of the student and how to calculate the average marks for the particular student. So a number of students you can store. Why? Because when you want to store the marks for particular students, so it will be like various subjects here. For example, I have taken only maths and science. Okay. So we have included data file. My class name is data. I have three data, member data, roll number, math and science. So this is your data member. These are my three member function. This is public access, which is having a public access specifier. Average, get data and put data. Put data you can use it as display too. So there are three operations which takes place here. So these are called as member functions: average, get data and put data. So this definition I have defined outside the class. My class ends here. I have shown you with an example how to define the member class definition, the member function definition outside the class. Now for get data, here I have only mentioned how the definition is here by using the scope resolution operator. Return type, your class name, scope resolution operator, get data. Now what get data will do? You are getting your reading the information from the user. So enter roll number. You are storing that in the roll number. This is in your data member. Okay, next we have enter math marks. I am storing it in maths. Enter science marks. I am storing it in science. So inside this I have one more function called put data. Okay, inside this I have called put data. Now after the control goes from put data to here. So once I read all this, there will be a put data. Before that, inside the put data I have average. I repeat, first when the program execution begins from your main function, so your main function begins here. So how it starts in main, clear screen. Let me explain this, then I will explain in the program flow. What are the operations we will do and explain. Average I am calculating, math and science, dividing it by 2 I get the average. Put data I am just again here inside this. The average function call will be called. So the function control goes from here. What average will do here? I am calling the average function. The average function definition is here. Now your program execution begins from a main function. Initially your execution starts here. Call clear screen. So this is very important. Data student. So stud3. This is my object. What is my object? I have created an array of objects. Stud3 is my array of objects. So I have three. Okay. So I have three fields. So stud3. Next I will be reading the for three students I can read. So here I am using a for loop. Then object is array of object studi. Why? Because array of objects, if it's for one student, one object is sufficient. This is for three. So I am putting that in a for loop. Dot get data. So I am calling get data. So your control will go to get data. Once I call get data, all this information will read it from the user. So inside get data I have put data. Once put data, where put data definition is present in your program, it's present here. What it will do? Average is equal to avj. Now what your average function will do? Average, here I declared a integer. So a, what it contains? Math marks plus science marks. Imagine math marks I have taken it as you just take any number. Imagine 35. Science is also 35. What is 35 plus 35? Okay, 70. 70 divided by 2 is what again? Okay, 70 divided by 2. Again 2 3s are 6, 2 5 are 10. Again the average is 35. So your answer average is equal to 35. So this is how here where we encounter the array of objects in the main function. In the main function by using my class name. What is my class name? Data. By using my class name I created an array of object. Okay. So this stud3 is nothing but array of objects. Then I have for loop. I can read the information up to. Okay. Now how to access this? How to access this object? How to access the member function by using this object? You cannot give it stud as it is. Why? Because it is an array of objects. So before that you need to create a for loop. Okay, then studi, then you are calling the get data function. Okay, so in this you can read the marks for 3 students. You can read the marks for 3 students. So there's 3 student roll number, math and science. So average for this 3 students marks can be calculated by using this program. Next we'll see the next concept, objects as function arguments. How to pass the arguments as how to pass the objects as arguments to your member function. Okay students, next this will be our last concept, like we will discuss how to define how to pass the objects as function arguments. So I'll tell you. So how to, you know what is mean by arguments. Even in your first year you might have studied how to pass the what are arguments, how to pass the arguments. There are 2 ways in passing. Okay, one is by using pass by value, next one by using pass by reference. Same concept here too. There are 2 ways of passing an object as a functional argument. One is by pass by value and pass by reference. Pass by value, we send a copy of it. Okay, pass by reference, we directly refer the address where that particular object is being presented in the, we just directly pass the memory address. So duplication copy is created in case of call by value or pass by value, wherein when you pass call by reference or pass by reference, when you give, there will not be duplicate copy, will not be created. Why? Because directly you are working on that particular place, directly you are pointing the address, you directly are giving the address. So the values once it gets changed, it will be changed permanently. Duplicate copies will not be present once you pass it by reference. Okay, so which method is efficient? If we consider which method is efficient, in the sense pass by reference is more efficient when compared to pass by value. I repeat, there are 2 ways by passing the values to the functional arguments. One is pass by reference and pass by value. So in the first example, before this actually in your regular class you might have seen in the regular videos how to pass the objects as by how to pass the objects by using pass by reference. Pass by reference, directly I give the value. For example, in the previous example I have given the marks, how to send the, you are reading the marks, not that marks example. Previously I have shown you an example. That example you just discussed, you just passed, yeah. While defining objects, I have taken 200, 300, 600 and 500. Like how to find the sum of 2 numbers and difference of 2 numbers. Directly I pass the value 600 and 500, 200 and 300. That is pass by value. Now this example I have taken to explain how to define it by using pass by, this is also pass by value, but how we are going to pass the objects as functional arguments. How I am going to pass the objects as functional arguments. So this is your class name is RUP. Okay, RUP. Then we have the data member N1 and N2. I have a constructor. Okay, after constructor, just I have given the member functions getter, then put, then I have multi. So in the get, what I will do, I will get the first number and the second number. Input, I am going to display the 2 product detail. In multiply only, I am going to multiply, okay, N1 and N2. So what I am going to do, here again I created, these are called as my, within the constructor. So I have created the N1 and N2. So these are again a variable. If I tell it as X, Y, Z, X and Y, it can be A and B. Like that, this is N1 and N2. Here it is N1, within the brace I have given 1, N2 and 1. So in the N1 and N2, so R1 dot N1 into R1 dot N2, R1 is nothing but my object, R2 is nothing but my object. So I am multiplying it with the N. Explaining about this, how we are going to do the multiplication. So multiplication, just you see, I am creating 2 objects, so R1 and R2. And this R1, by using this R1 I am accessing the data variable. Okay, so that result in return I am just storing it in R1 and R2. So these are my member function, multi, put and get. These are my member function. The definitions we have seen. Now the main concept lies here. Like we have the main function, your execution becomes from your main function. So I am creating 3 objects. Okay, by using the class name. What was your class name? RUP. By using the class name, I am creating 3 objects, R1, R2 and R3, and I am calling clear screen, clear your screen. And by using R1, I am calling get, and again R2 I am calling get. Okay, 2 times I am calling the get function. But here you see, when I want to access the member function, you have to access by using the object itself. So R3 dot multi, and I am passing the objects. What was my object? R1 and R2. So this is very important. This is your concept. How we are going to pass the objects as arguments to the function. Multi is a function. We are aware of that is a member function. To this member function, I am passing this R1 and R2. Okay. Later by using R3, I am using print. You can ask me a question, why only by using R3? Can we use R1, R2? Yes, of course we can use R1 and R2. Only we need an object to call the member function. Here we have used R3 to print. Okay. But here in multi they have just passed these two objects as an arguments. These two objects as an arguments to your multi member function. So this is an example to pass the objects as the member function. So after this small concept is left off, like in your regular video, sir has just discussed what is the difference between structure and class. You just go through that. Next, this is about this ends the class chapter. This ends the revision of class. In the next class, I'll just upload the notes for classes and objects. Please go through. I'll just brief what we discussed in today's class. Just only these points I'll just tell. What we have discussed in today's class, we have just seen the definition for class, what is an object, what is member function, what is data member and member function, what are the access specifiers, scope resolution operator, class members, how we can access by using dot operator. See here how I am accessing the member function by using dot operator. How to define the member function outside the class by using scope resolution operator. Then we have seen array of objects. Then we have seen array as then we have seen how to pass the objects as functional arguments. Then what is the difference between the structure and the class? Okay, thank you.
Today's assignment questions. Let us see what are the assignment questions for today's session. In today's session, we have only a 5-mark question based. We'll see what are the questions. The first question is, what are the characteristics of member function outside a class? Second question, explain how objects of a class can be defined. Third question, illustrate how an array of an object can be defined. Fourth question, describe how objects can be used as function arguments. We'll come again, students. The first question is, what are the characteristics of member function outside the class? Second question, explain how objects of a class can be defined. Illustrate how an array of objects can be defined. Fourth question, describe how object can be used as function arguments. These are the 4 questions which has been based on today's session. Thank you, students. We'll see you in next session. Thank you.